They're joining governmental agencies. The DOJ now is more than 50% women, as is the SEC enforcement divisions. They're coming in-house. Those people are being successful in those jobs, and sooner or later, those are the very people you're going to be going to trying to get business, or alternatively, trying to get a break when you've engaged in some regulatory violation. So it really does benefit you greatly to figure out a way to determine what you have in common with diverse people in a real way, individual to individual, to start building real relationships, because those relationships pay you back over and over and over again over the course of a career.
I'll just say, in the not too distant future, the United States of America will be significantly more minority than the current majority, right? So knowing that, why would you exclude those people who will necessarily be evolving into the positions that help you and your bottom line, right? It's the same situation with women previously. And now, everywhere you look, there are women everywhere holding the positions, you know, that traditionally were the bastions of white men, right? So people don't forget, right? They don't forget. They do reward people who are innovative and who are progressive in their thoughts and who are trying to help to achieve the goals that we should be along the diversity line. But they don't forget you when you're a person who, you know, neglected to embrace diversity and help them to grow as an individual, or help others like them to grow as individuals in the business world. So my answer is, you know, to that is, unless you're about to die or retire or you're fine, you know, you weren't affected by the recession and the stock market crash, you know, your ability to live the life that you have been living in the future will be greatly impacted by the levels of diversity that are existing in the companies with which you do business, as well as the courtrooms that you go into as well.
Judy?
I guess 2 points. Number one, tap dance if you tap dance. Sherry's been successful in golfing and smoking cigars and drinking scotch, and that is terrific and that is wonderful. But tap dance if you tap dance. If you're about something in life that's different than the institution with which you want to be associated, don't be afraid to show it. She's not doing something just to do it. She's doing it because she likes golf. And I don't want anybody to walk out of this room and think that there's something different there. The wealth and the beauty and the value you bring is because of the diversity that you bring. And when I was at my law firm for 21 years and had slews of babies while I was there, some people said had slews and slews of babies while I was there. The one thing I did the entire time was bring those kids on Saturdays so they could see them. I would yell down the hall that I was, taking the kids to the pediatrician, that I'd be back later on, or whatever I had to do to let them know that was a big part of my life at the time. So make sure, if you tap dance, you let them know how good you are at it, but don't hide that part of yourself from them. And the only thing else I'll say is, importantly, if you think, anybody in this room thinks that retention is the crisis issue right now, watch your back, because there's another one coming down the way, and that's the pipeline issue. And everybody in this room has to be invested in the pipeline issue. And if we're not, there's going to be significant failures across the board. It is bigger than opening the door the first time, I would suggest to you, or just as challenging. I don't want to denigrate anything that's happening before. It is as tough as retention, and it is more important than both of them put together. So make sure you're watching the pipeline issue. What's coming behind? How wide the hoses are open? What are we doing to get people through? What are we doing to prepare them so they can come into this wonderful world of ours that we think was made a better place?
Excellent points, Sandra.
I'm glad you touched on those points, because at the end of the day, these are all factors that are going to impact your bottom line. How well you have an internship program, your retention program, your pipeline. I mean, these are all factors that you have to consider. And you may not have any metrics or concrete examples. There are naysayers out there who are suggesting that, why are we spending all this time on diversity efforts, training people in diversity, And I think that what we have to understand is that it may take, a while for those studies, trickle down, and we really have a correlation between at the end of the year, how much money we made and how diverse our workforce is. But I think that in order for us to have that competitive advantage, we have to keep our eye on target. We have to make sure that we're working toward diversity and understand that it's not necessarily a final destination, but a continuing journey.
Thank you very much. I just want to sum up with two observations, and they have to do with two things. First, opportunity, and the second is brand. It used to be, I believe, that people saw opportunity simply as a sort of a one-dimensional thing, and that was, here's your opportunity to succeed, have at it. I think opportunity is actually sort of a threefold thing. First of all, there's the opportunity to succeed. There's also the opportunity to fail. Because far too often, when a person of color or a woman is given an opportunity, and as is often the case when anyone is in the early stages either of their career or of the learning curve or the beginning of their subject matter knowledge, there are some stumbling blocks. But I think the hook, to use a sports terminology, comes pretty quickly when a person of color or a woman is given an opportunity and they don't necessarily shine, and then other persons of color or women aren't given opportunities. That's just fundamentally unfair. And then the other thing that is, I think, connected to that is the opportunity to grow. Because when someone has a stumbling block, that's simply an opportunity for either a mentor or a personal board of directors, or, a lot of mentoring takes place from peers, people who are your colleagues who are in the same sort of age or class range as you, opportunities to learn and opportunities to grow. And sometimes because the eggshell type environment is so fraught with dangers, there's a reluctance or the lack of courage to go to a person and say, you know what, you messed that up, but let's learn from that. I think the cruelest thing you can do to a person, and Sherry talked earlier about that sort of social and cultural isolation, I think the cruelest thing you can do to someone who already feels that isolation, who's down the hall making mistakes, is to let them just flounder and wither on the vine until they're finally pushed out, because you don't have the courage to go down there and say, this is what you're doing wrong. This is how you can learn from it. So there's the opportunity to succeed, the opportunity to fail, and frankly, the opportunity to grow. On the issue of brand, let me tell you a story that's personal to me. Some of you who I've known a long time know that I was actually here during Hurricane Katrina. I chose to stay at Methodist Hospital with my wife, who was an OB on staff there, to help care for her patients. And if you know anything about New Orleans East was devastated. That's where Methodist is located. And we were stranded there for a week. Now, just the two of us, but with our then 3-month-old baby. And it was a horrific situation. I mean, I had 7 people literally die in my arms during that time before we were finally able to get all the patients evacuated and we were evacuated out. I was still working for Entergy at the time, had no inkling that I would ever work for Walmart or even consider working for Walmart. But one of the things that I saw with my own eyes flying out was a long, mile-long line of Walmart trucks trying to get supplies into the city. It helps a lot if the place that you work is a place that you're proud of and that you want to work with. That goes a long way. It makes all the difference in the world. And this ties into that illustration that I gave you at the beginning when I asked you to think of an entity that has, in your mind, a reputation for not necessarily being fair to minorities and people of color. Some of those entities, I thought of one of them, again, I'm not going to call any names, but some of these entities, after having gotten their reputation, have actually gone to extraordinary lengths to overcome that reputation. And in some people's mind, that taint is still there. So I say to you, if you are a corporation, if you are a company, if you are a law firm, work to make sure that diversity isn't an addendum, it's not an add-on, it's not the flavor of the month, it's not what's in fashion, that it is an integral part, as Sherry mentioned earlier, of your culture. And that the place that you manage is a place that anybody can be proud to work for. Please appreciate the panelists.